Can you hear me? Yes. I would like to thank you for having me here today. I would like to thank particularly my former colleague and friend Jean-Claude Gauderiot, who contacted me one day during my vacation and said, could you make a presentation about demographics here in Berlin? And I was in a Parkplatz, somewhere in Germany, near München, and I said, yes, why not? And then I had to find out, what should I say about here? Well, I've decided not to give you a specific presentation designed for this audience. Actually, I was lucky. We had a working team working on demographics at Solvay during the first semester. And in about 10 days, we have a leadership team meeting for the human resources managers. And I will be presenting this presentation. A bit more than this. This is an extract. Actually, I picked up something like 25 slides out of a 50-slide pack. But basically, that's exactly what we will discuss. And so you will see 10 days ahead of time what they will see, what we will discuss in about 10 days. Before we go to demographics, 5 slides about Solvay. So Solvay, I took here the picture of the founders, I would say the founding fathers and the founding brothers of the company about 150 years ago. Why did I pick that picture? It's because Solvay is an old company. It's 150 years old, and there is still an old spirit in it. The culture was there, and it started with commodity chemicals, and it's still pretty much for half of its production in commodity chemicals. Now, if you look now at Solvay today, Solvay, not that long ago, 6 months ago, was about a 9 billion euro company with 3 sectors, pharmaceuticals, plastics, and chemicals. Less than 6 months ago, they sold pharmaceuticals for a good size of money, actually more than 5 billion euros. So now the practical joke at Solvay is we are a bank, and we have 2 little activities, chemicals and plastics. Solvay actually is poised for an acquisition. Nobody knows which one. Actually, it's one of the best guarded secrets in the world. I've never seen a secret like that in Solvay. Usually when you have a secret, everybody knows about it in the hallways. But this one, I can tell you, is a well-guarded secret. The other thing is Solvay is restructuring. This is my second here, yellow square. Actually, today, if you open your favorite newspapers, financial newspapers, there was an announcement. Solvay is restructuring, unfortunately, all over the world, and the company will shed 800 positions all over the world, 600 in Europe. Why? Because pharmaceutical is going, because we have to restructure the headquarters, because they are decentralizing in the different regions. So that's about where we are today. We are in a company in flux, in change. I've been with the company 26 years. I've seen more changes in the past 5 or 6 than in the previous 20. That's life. I think we have to adapt. I think that's also demographics. Hopefully demographics is a bit slower. No. I will not go far. Chemicals is still pretty much commodity chemicals. We're still based with the old alkali, the soda ash, electrochemicals, fluor products, and hydrogen peroxide. And then we have plastics. Plastics is more balanced. Plastics is about 50% really specialty plastics, things that you can find in UPC, for instance. The little lubricant for your hard drive is a Solvay product. You don't know that, and nobody knows the Solvay products because they are hidden somewhere in consumer products. But it also has a big vinyl cluster, so it's a big producer of vinyl resins for the manufacturing of PVC. So the likelihood is if you have a window frame made of PVC, it's likely to be a Solvay resin. And this is what Solvay would like to be. Solvay, I don't know if you, I'd like to have a raise of hands here. Have you seen this little plane somewhere in the news? Yeah, some of you? Yeah. This little plane, it has a wingspan of an Airbus, the weight of a car, and the engine power of a scooter. But it flies only with solar power. Okay, so its wings are full of fuel cells, solar cells, I mean. And probably in a couple of years, the target is to have this plane fly around the world only with solar energy. And Solvay is a main partner in this venture because it manufactures a number of plastics which find their place in, I would say, all over the pieces of this plane. So it's really what Solvay used to be, the old chemical company, and what it would like to be. And everybody is really eager to know what will the new acquisition be. Okay. Now, coming back to demographics, the subject of the day, as I'm telling you, I'm not inventing this. I will present this in 10 days, and I didn't do it, by the way. Monique Anciot is really the project leader who did this. I was on the steering committee, but I didn't do the research myself. I will start with a few slides here under the close supervision of Professor Tivik. Complex, looks like a complicated graph, but basically it's fairly easy to understand. If you look at the vertical axis, the vertical axis shows you the growth. Is this sector growing? Well, the chemical sector is a little blue one there with the arrow pointing on it. So the sector is not growing. We will see that actually the chemical sector industry is slowly declining, has been slowly declining over the past 10 years. But on the horizontal axis, it is rising in skill. This is what we call a upskilling sector. So it's both in a high upskilling, but some sort of a no-job growth, status quo, maybe a little bit declining. So it's an interesting one because for us it tells us where is this industry going. This comes from CFIC. You're familiar with CFIC, and I guess it's an extract from Eurostat. And it shows you the slow decline of the chemical industry headcount in the USA and Europe. And the green line is the USA. The blue line is Europe. So you see that the blue line is a bit higher. But on average, I would say the sector has lost about 2% a year in terms of employment. Is this likely to continue? I don't know. If the trend continues, it could be, according to the Eurostat statistics, it could be leveling off in the next years. My last picture on statistics, and I think this one comes from, I don't know, I think it's LLP anyway. Reckon, yes, okay. It shows what I was saying. On the one hand, it's stable or slowly declining. On the other hand, it's upskilling. The blocks here tell you that if you compare the years 2001 and 2005, and I think it has even increased after that, it shows the level of education, low education like below secondary education, and higher education, and you see that actually it is slowly upskilling. So the conclusion on that is that the chemical industry is relying more and more about upskilling of employees. So we'll need to focus more and more on employees and students actually coming out of higher level education. The question is, will we find them? That's another one. Now we are coming into the Solvay analysis per se, and I will show you two pyramid of ages. The first one, the one on the upper side, shows the entire population. We call them cadre and non-cadre in French. I guess you are familiar. I think Leitende and Angestellte in German, cadre in Italy. Basically, it's not exactly the same. I would say it's not really managers, non-managers, but it's more like exempt, non-exempt in the USA. What do we see? The study was focusing on the cadre population because that's where we think we have the most difficulties. We will have the most difficulties in the future years. You see that today, our average age population for the cadre population is 46 years old. And if you project that pyramid by 2020, so 10 years, not that far away in time, there will be 53 years old, so which is fairly old. So the question is, what do we do with that? Very quickly, we realized that a pyramid of age is not very operational. It gives you a broad idea, but you cannot draw conclusions from a pyramid of age. You really have to go down to the specifics. You have to go down to a site or to a specific function. we interviewed actually a number of managers and senior managers in the manufacturing, and what they are saying is, since the mid-'80s, actually, we have been going through a massive automation process. And so the headcount has been reduced. When I joined the company, there were 40,000, and pharmaceutical was not big. In chemicals and plastic, I think we are about almost half, I would say, 26 years later, and we are producing more. So basically, the productivity has increased tremendously through automation, and the quality or the level of the people working in the industry has risen. So what they're telling me is that org charts have reached what they call in engineering language, asymptotic level. You can't go much further. You are really back at the bare bones. You are at the backbones. That technical competencies have become more difficult to acquire. And you will see why, because when you come to the backbone, basically you have difficulties moving people around. And further, we are, in 2010, a number of our sites are kind of isolated in not very attractive positions or locations, and so you cannot necessarily attract your bright engineer that you would like to groom, you know, and then one day bring to the headquarters to become a member of the executive committee. I'm not really attracted by that proposition. Don't worry reading that. It's coming from, we have a database. We have invested a lot in the tools. We are using the SAP software with a workforce planning specific software on it. And this is an extract of it, but basically in 30% of our sites we have the average age of 50 years old and plus for our cattle population. And so we know that the problems are coming. They're not for tomorrow, but they could be for after tomorrow. So we asked the team, we said, okay, that's fine, that's nice, but what are your solutions? And you will see that we will address very quickly. I will not have the time, of course, to go in depth. You'll be, of course, welcome to ask questions, and we could go more in depth. But basically, we have 5 areas where they said, that we should try to address. Viscosity in internal mobility. Actually, it may sound surprising, but part of the solution may already be there. And we are not we don't have a win-win proposition necessarily with the employees we have in place and what the company is doing. And you will see that they have spent a lot of time thinking about what they call this viscosity in internal mobility. Then we'll look at the aging workforce, the famous Y generation, because that will be an issue at Solvay, diversity, and the concept of key knowledge transfer. So viscosity in mobility, vertical mobility. So people are not motivated sometimes because, like in many companies, I would say in the past 15 years, the pyramid has flattened. Used to be a nice narrow pyramid with a number of steps, 6, 7 steps. Now in most cases, you have 3 levels. If you are in a site or if you are in a department, between the CEO and the entry-level guy, you have 3 levels at the most. And I believe we are not an exception because we are not the leading edge company in that area. So upwards mobility is an issue. People do not see why should I really do that over time or really kick it hard to move upward. Horizontal functional mobility. We have an issue there because, but I think we can solve it partly because we have silos. We don't have these buffer pools. I will come back to it. And geographic mobility. Solvay is a multinational company. We only have 10% of our assets in Belgium. So the headquarters are in Brussels. So we need people to move around. But it's more difficult now to move people around, to move them to the USA, to Asia, anywhere. The sociological aspects, of course, the spouse work, the children with veto power. I mean, you have kids at 14 who said, I'm not going. So what do you do in such a case? And not only when you find people to go, you cannot get them to come back because the company they left has changed so much in the past 5 years that there is no